Okay.
Okay.
Right.
So we got a question.
钢铁吗？
Sling brought a question from someone that left it on Facebook. And the question literally is, did Nichiren say anything about chapter 25 of the Lotus Sutra? Like that chapter is all about Alokovitakeshvara Bodhisattva, Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, to me, perceiver of the world sounds. Okay? That's the same guy. This Avalokokotititu whatever, Bodhisattva, is the same person as Kuan Yin Bodhisattva, and you guys all know Kuan Yin, right? Okay, and we refer to him as perceiver of the world's sounds. Okay? He says, so who is the Bodhisattva's teacher? Wouldn't it be Amida Buddha? Okay, he's asking that question because in one of the three, I think it's the Sutra on Infinite Light or Infinite Life, they're interchangeable, which means Amida. He's an attendant. He's one of the main attendants to Amida. So our friend is assuming that there's a link between perceiver of the world sounds and Amida that is something as in teacher. Okay? But is Amida Buddha the teacher of other Buddhas? No. No, all Buddhas are taught by the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Thus come one, all Buddhas attain their Buddhahood through Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, according to Nichiren. Okay, so he says, so there's a link between those two, therefore why Nichiren... So he's basically saying, look, there's the 25th chapter of the Lotus Sutra is perceiver of the world sounds, and perceiver of the world sounds was the attendant of Amida Buddha, so wouldn't that say that Amida Buddha has a connection to the Lotus Sutra somehow? And I would say to our friend, yeah, he was there. Okay? The point is that, and that's part of the reason why the Daishonin is so critical of the misunderstanding of the other schools, is the fact that, when you're talking about any of the sutras that are associated with it, also understand, Nichiren never said a bad thing about Amida, or about perceiver of the world sounds, or about any of the bodhisattvas from the Lotus Sutra that were at the assembly. He couldn't. They were all disciples of the Buddha. Everybody that was there took the same vow to uphold the law. Okay? The point is that there's a difference between Amida and perceiver of the world sound as his attendant, okay, and the meditation on the Infinite Light Sutra, which was used by Honen to create Nimbutsu. Okay? So they're two different things. All right? Frankly, what you're talking about, as far as Nichiren is concerned, and you said, does he say anything about it? Go to the 25th chapter of the orally transmitted teachings. He'll say all kinds of good things. He'll say, basically, you and I, as bodhisattvas of the earth, are perceiver of the world sound. Okay? So, I could read all that, but it will be lengthy. I want to put it on tape for him at some point in time. If we get done tonight fast enough, I'll go into all this reference material. But to give him a quick overview comment, understand that Nichiren's criticism of Nimbutsu, not of Amida or of anything that precedes, that belongs in the former or the middle day of the law, but in the latter day of the law. Okay, it's no longer appropriate for these Buddhas to be perceived this way because they're being expressed in the Lotus Sutra as expedient means. Okay, there's not 1, 2, or 3 vehicles. There's but one vehicle, remember? Okay, again, the whole thing about perceiver of the world sound. Any shit going down, any problem you got, you yell out his name and he will appear. Or he will take the form of somebody else. Or she will take the form of somebody else. Do you really believe that? That's magic. Okay? That's a level of metaphysicality that if you want to hang on to because you feel you need that kind of spiritual superior being kind of a thing that can shape shift and turn into different stuff. Nichiren sure couldn't do that. I sure can't do any of that. And yet, Nichiren qualifies what we do as Buddhahood. All right? So, the thing to understand is that both perceiver of the world sound and Amida because all the Buddhas of the 10 directions were called to the assembly. Everybody remember? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the Lotus Sutra says all the Buddhas from the 10 directions occurred that ceremony, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, so who is Amida? Buddha of the West, the wonderful world in the West or something, the Western paradise, again. Amida comes from a Buddha land. What has the Lotus Sutra and the Daishonin's teaching also qualified? Where is the Buddha land in reality? The Sahe world. There is no Buddha land other than as an expedient means, just like the parable of the Phantom City, to get you across the desert when you're ready to give up and say, shit, I can't make it. It's to keep you going. It's to give you hope. Okay? When we function as bodhisattvas of the earth, aren't we there for everybody we can be? As real people. Okay? Not as stories, but as real people. So, when he's saying, therefore, why Nichiren refuses Amida? He doesn't refuse Amida. He qualifies that Amida was at the ceremony in the air. That Amida was a part of the assembly. That Amida took the vow to uphold the Lotus Sutra. And quite frankly, all of the sutras that pertain to Nimbutsu are from the correct and equal period. They're not even from the wisdom period. These are very, preloaded, these are pre-Lotus, these are beginner Mahayana sutras. They're still dealing with God's taking care of you. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. All right, so, again, to my friend that asked the question, the Daishonin doesn't put down Amida Buddha. Does not put down Perceiver of the World Sound. Qualifies, this is now the latter day of the law. They have taken a vow to uphold Nam-myoho Renge-kyo in now the latter day of the law. To do Nimbutsu as to repeat the name of Amida Buddha so that you can end up in the pure land in the West is incorrect practice and slander. Okay? And again, what Nichiren says is Nimbutsu leads to the hell of incessant suffering. That's what he says in the 4 dictums. He doesn't say Amida Buddha leads you to the hell of incessant suffering. The incorrect understanding of the teaching made up by Honen. Made up by Honen. Okay? Just like Shantao made up the parts of inserting the 3,000 realms in a single moment of life. Yep. Okay, into the Mahavrachana Sutra. So you've got this same thing happening on both sides. You've got True Word doing the same thing. All right? True Word and Nimbutsu are two different, right? One's Mount Hei, one's whatever, right? Okay, so is everybody with me? Again, Sling, I hope this will suffice to get this conversation going. I will be more than happy to give him all the reference material. Look, online you can go and look up, read the 25th chapter, read the whole Perceiver of the World Sound Sutra, see if it mentions Amida Buddha in there anywhere. As a matter of fact, see where it says Perceiver of the World Sound say anything. Perceiver of the World Sound is not the author of the 25th chapter, the Perceiver of the World Sound chapter. Okay? It's told by someone else. Go to the Lotus Sutra and read the Lotus Sutra. If you really want to understand what the teaching of the Lotus Sutra is, read the Lotus Sutra. It will open your eyes. And then, if you want to know more about all of this, you can very simply go to the Buddhist dictionary, look under Perceiver, P for Perceiver of the World Sound, because that's where you're going to find it. All right? And read what it says. And I'll go into all that doctrinal stuff in a separate video sometime when we have time. But tonight we're continuing, and I'm sorry I couldn't have spent more time on that question. It was a very good question, and I appreciate it. I appreciated the opportunity to try and answer it. So thank you very much. Anybody else have anything else they want to ask or add, they may. Where were we last week when we left off? We were on page 85 at the bottom, weren't we?
Right.
Okay, so we stopped right at sort of a bridge point in this Go Show. And of course tonight we're still reading from Learning from the Writings of the Hope-Filled Teachings of Nichiren Daishonin by Daisaku Ikeda, and we are finishing the second half of On the Buddhist Prophecy, which starts on page 77, and we are now continuing from the last column on page 85 right here. If anybody's going with the book with us. Question. We're going to start with a question. Rereading of the sutra itself. By the way, did everybody understand what I said about this? Clearly, right? You too. In case somebody asks you again, understand. If anybody ever thinks that Nichiren put down Nimbutsu because he doesn't like Amida, no. He puts down Nimbutsu because Nimbutsu does not follow the vow that Amida has taken himself in the Lotus Sutra to uphold the Lotus Sutra after the Buddha's passing. All right, so, question. I have seen that the Buddha's prophecy applies to you. Will you remember where we are? He's just been discussing other things and been talking to whoever he's having this commentary with, and he's discussed the prophecy. Who's the prophecy got to do with? Does it have to do with Shakyamuni? He's saying no. Okay, I can see that the prophecy has to do with you, or at least the prophecy of the latter day of the law has to do with you. Okay? I have seen that the Buddha's prophecy applies to you, Nichiren. Now, what do you yourself predict? Okay, the Buddha's already predicted Nichiren. Now, Nichiren, what do you predict? And Nichiren says, answer. In light of the Buddha's prophecy, the last 500-year period that marks the start of the latter day of the law has already begun. I say that without fail, the correct teaching of Buddhism will arise and flow from east and west, will arise and flow forth from the east, from the land of Japan. This all pertains to that young man, that's fine. All right, that's cool. Going on to page 85, pardon me. Nichiren Daishonin's prophecy, the westward transmission of Buddhism. Nichiren Daishonin's own prophecy is clear. A direct question is posed about his prediction for the future, and he answers unhesitatingly. His prediction is that of the Western transmission of Buddhism. That is to say, worldwide Kosen Rufu. He declares that the great law, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which has the power to lead all people to enlightenment throughout the 10,000 years and more of the latter day, has now appeared. Everybody's with me?
Yeah.
He's qualifying that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the teaching for forever, from now on. And he prophesizes that it will open the way for the happiness of humanity and lead to the construction of a world of peace and prosperity, which is what we're all trying to do now, right? Mm-hmm. He writes, the moon appears in the west and sheds its light eastward, but the sun rises in the east and casts its rays to the west. The same is true of Buddhism. The Buddhism of Shakyamuni, in other words, the Buddhism of the harvest, spread from west to east, making its way from India to Japan in the former and middle days of the law. But the great law, and he calls it the great law versus the law, which Shakyamuni constantly says, the law, right? When Nichiren refers to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, he refers to the great law, because it's now time for the great law to appear. The time for the Buddhism of the harvest has passed. The beginning of the latter day has begun. Now it's time for the great law to appear, right? The great law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo will travel from East Japan to West in the latter day. Regarding this passage, Mr. Toda wrote, if we were to fail to actualize this prediction, then wouldn't we as the Buddha's disciples be guilty of making a lie out of the Buddha's prophecy? That is truly a frightening and sobering thought. Okay? Now, does that sound familiar to anybody? Does that way of thinking sound familiar to you?
I don't think I will. Somebody else see it.
What it is the same manner of embracing the teaching that the Daishonin took. The Daishonin says, if it weren't for me, all of Shakyamuni's predictions wouldn't have occurred. Okay? And I must do this in order to fulfill my obligation to Shakyamuni Buddha, who made the prediction that someone. So if it's not for me to do this, maybe somebody else won't do it. It will prove the Buddha to be a great liar. Right. Do you remember that? Okay. So what is President Toda saying here then? He's saying if the Daishonin has now made these same predictions, and as his declared disciples, the bodhisattvas of the earth, we don't make it happen, won't we in fact be failing our original teacher?
Yes.
Okay, that's the point he's making. He says, if we were to fail to actualize this prediction of widespread propagation of Kosen Rufu, then wouldn't we, as the Buddha's disciples, as the true Buddha's disciples, not Shakyamuni, Nichiren, do you understand? As the Buddha's disciples be guilty of making a lie of the Buddha's prophecy? Because don't forget, the prophecy we're talking about, the Buddhist prophecy that we're talking about in this Gosho is not Shakyamuni's prophecy. It's Nichiren's prophecy of the fact that Nam-myoho Renge-kyo will spread and flourish for 10,000 years and create, the time that's more cool than Ning and Nang or whatever it was when the rains didn't break the clods of soil and all that happy stuff. Okay? So that is a truly frightening and sobering thought. In response to the prophecy of the westward transmission of Buddhism, Mr. Toda called for the realization of Kosen Rufu in Asia and encouraged us youth to take our place on the global stage to propagate Nichiren Buddhism far and wide. Our great alliance for peace based on the mystic law has today spread to 192 countries and territories, making Mr. Toda's spirit my own. I opened a path to the world. And how did he do that? How did he do that? Our great alliance for peace based on the mystic law has today spread to 192 countries and territories, making Mr. Toda's spirit my own. I opened a path to the world. Is he just arrogant?
No.
What is he saying? What did he do? How did he open a path to the world? In 1960, he got on an airplane and he left Japan. President Toda had never left Japan. Okay?
He went around.
Right. He went around the world. And where did he go first? He went to Europe first.
No,
But yeah, he went to meet some philosophers.
Yes. So,
isn't Hawaii first?
pardon me, Hawaii, and then
Yeah.
then the States, and then on to Europe. But the point is that at that point in time, he started Remember, at that point in time, he was meeting people and making them leaders.
Yeah.
Like almost as quickly as he had made their acquaintance. That's what he was trying to accomplish as it related to establishing a beachhead in each of these countries that he went. That there would be somebody that he could be communicated through to. Okay? So he says, Mr. Makaguchi earnestly took to heart the declaration of the westward transmission of Buddhism and worldwide Kosen Rufu, and nurtured a fervent wish to enable people across the globe to actualize the principle of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. So what did he just say there? I'll say it again. First President, Mr. Makaguchi, earnestly took to heart the declaration of the westward transmission of Buddhism, okay, the establishment of Kosen Rufu, and worldwide Kosen Rufu, and nurtured a fervent wish to enable people across the globe to actualize the principle of attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. What did he do? What was his fervent wish?
To spread.
No, it was much deeper than that. Spreading can be very temporary. What he tried, what his goal was was an actualization that will last 10,000 years and beyond. What he just says, he says, nurtured a fervent wish to enable people across the globe to actualize the principle. And so to actualize something that if it's not actualized, it's just theoretical. Right. It's a principle. Right. To actualize attaining Buddhahood in one's present form. What is that? Actuation in Sanzen. So his goal was for people around the world to actually be able to be Buddhas. Not read about Buddhas, not know that they can be Buddhas, to be Buddhas. All right? As living examples to bring forth the Buddha nature of the others that could be Buddhas just as easily if their faith were correct. But they don't understand. So he's saying, Mr. Toda inherited his wish from his mentor. Before he died, he told me about a dream he had of going to Mexico. Now, again, this is Mr. Toda talking about a dream he's had just before he's about ready to pass away. He's never been out of Japan, right? He's saying, they were all waiting, he said. Everyone was waiting. They were all seeking Nichiren Buddhism. I want to go. I want to travel the world on a journey for Kosen Rufu. These words, President Ikeda says, will resonate forever in my mind. I will accomplish my mentor's goal. I'll go to Mexico. He can't. He's sick and old. I'll go to South America. I'll go to Europe. I'll go to all those places, right? Each time I have ventured overseas, I have done so with the spirit of taking Mr. Toda with me and showing him firsthand the development of worldwide Kosen Rufu, to let him know your dream wasn't a dream, dude. We've made it a reality. With that sentiment, I have visited countries around the globe and reached out in dialogue to countless people. When traveling abroad, I have always carried with me a photograph of my mentor. Now I can confidently report to him my victory. And this is not arrogance. I have actualized the cherished wish of my two great predecessors. For reals. That's why I'm able to read what I'm reading to you right now. That is what I'm reading to you. That actualization is what I'm reading to you. I have completed the sound and solid foundations of worldwide Kosen Rufu. I can vividly imagine Mr. Toda's warm, happy smile. The second act of worldwide Kosen Rufu. Now, what's the second act?
The what side?
Nope.
The creation of Daddy.
That's what practicing Buddhism is. What's the second act of Kosen Rufu? Yes, George, you're correct. Say it out loud instead of just making a head. The bodhisattvas of the earth that have emerged to establish widespread propagation in the absence of those mentors. Makaguchi's gone. Toda's gone. Ikeda's going to be gone soon. Okay, hopefully not soon, but at some point in time we all die. So the second half is that once the stage has been set, the disciples take on the mentor's vow, the mentor's mission. They accomplish the mentor's goal. Do you understand?
Yes.
That's the second. That's the second. The second act of worldwide Kosen Rufu is an age when infinite, brilliant flowers of value creation based on Buddhism come into bloom through the magnificent endeavors of our members, bodhisattvas of the earth. All of you blooming into the Buddhas that you actually have always been. I have fully prepared the stage for them. I got all the reading material done. I took all the experts to do all the expert translations. You guys are loaded for bear. Really, you don't have anything else to search for or be in want of. I've given you all the tools. Now it's up to you to take the action to utilize the tools to create this second stage. Do you understand? So he's saying, I have fully prepared the stage for them. People from diverse fields around the globe have high hopes for the SGI's activities for peace and culture, of humanism, not as an organization or a social club, as the original intent. Okay? Widespread propagation. That's why we have the Soka Gakkai. This victory, glory, and good fortune is shared by all our members throughout the world and will flow on to their children and descendants in future generations. I extend my heartfelt gratitude to everyone, because he's saying, I couldn't have done this without all of you helping me every step of the way. I didn't do this by myself. Okay? Going on the page 87, first column, from the Gosho. 21 years have gone by since I, Nichiren, understood this principle and began propagation. During this period, I have suffered difficulties day after day and month after month. In the last 2 or 3 years, among other things, I was almost put to death. The chances are 1 in 10,000 that I will survive the year or even the month. If anyone questions these things, let that person ask my disciples for details. What fortune is mine to expiate in one lifetime the offenses of slandering the law I have accumulated from the infinite past? How delighted I am to serve Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings, whom I have never seen. I pray that before anything else I can guide and lead the ruler and those others who persecuted me. I will tell the Buddha about all the disciples who have aided me, and before I die, I will transfer the great blessings deriving from my practice to my parents who gave me life. Now when he says, what fortune is mine to expiate in one lifetime the offenses of slandering the law I've accumulated from the infinite past? What does that really mean? How does that sentence make sense? How can he say that?
All his life.
What is he talking about? Yeah, he's
had
got a
a-
lifetime.
He had a hard life.
He's always been the true Buddha, dear.
Yeah.
Okay? He doesn't appear in many forms like deer. He's not Shakyamuni.
No.
Okay? He comes only to propagate the true teaching. But for his disciples, he's speaking to them as Nichiren, a common mortal, an ordinary person. And he's allowing them to perceive the truth of the reward that lies within the practice that he's laying out for them, that is absolutely validated by all the teachings that have preceded him. And what is that truth? I'll say it again. What fortune is mine. Think of this as you. All right? What fortune is mine to expiate in one lifetime. This time right now, I'm alive, I'm sentient, I know I exist, I can do stuff, I can read, I can talk to people. Okay? In one life, what fortune is mine to expiate in one lifetime the offenses of slandering the law I have accumulated from the infinite past? How does that happen? How do you do that in one lifetime?
Yeah.
How do you do in one lifetime? How do you do that?
But you are a Buddha in
That's
the present
again.
form.
He's saying, what fortune is mine to achieve and express actual Ichinen Sanzen. Because actual Ichinen Sanzen is based on the simultaneity of cause and effect, which wipes out all those slanders, so that the effects of those slanders are no longer applicable in a single moment of life.
Right.
You've turned on the Buddha nature that's never extinguished. Now, are you going to have karma for them? Yeah. But are you going to suffer for them? No. Because they're all going to be part and parcel of the story you tell as the Buddha that does all his happy stuff. Do you understand? All of your poison turns into medicine once you achieve actual Ichinen Sanzen, right? That's what he's talking about. What fortune is mine to expiate in one lifetime the offenses of slandering the law I have accumulated from the infinite past, because I met the correct teaching. All right? How delighted I am to serve Shaka. I've already read that. Okay, continuing. The serene mind, President Ikeda's lecture, continuing on the second column of page 87. The supreme mind of the Buddha of the latter day of the law.
Serene.
I said serene, didn't I?
Supreme.
I may have said supreme, pardon me. The serene mind of the Buddha of the latter day of the law. Thank you. Okay, he's previously talked about, I've been aware of this principle, right? All right, so here he says, he's going to qualify, what is this principle? This principle refers to the appearance of the votary of the Lotus Sutra, who will undertake the widespread propagation of law in the latter day, just as Shakyamuni predicts in the sutra. All right? Nichiren Daishonin had been aware of this principle for 21 years since establishing his teaching in 1253. Throughout that time, he endured steadily intensifying persecution and was ultimately exiled to Sado, where he wrote this writing. Don't forget, when he's writing this writing, he's saying, I may not even last through the year. Okay? But he's not bummed out about it because he's already achieved actual Ichinen Sanzen. Right? He's already laid the groundwork. He's already brought forth Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Though never knowing whether he would survive to see another day, Nichiren here records his resolve to exert even greater effort to spread the correct teaching and lead people to enlightenment. In those days, being sentenced to exile on Sado was second in severity only to execution. No one, it was said, ever returned from exile. Therefore, his assertion, the chances are 1 in 10,000 that I will survive the year or even the month, is certainly not hyperbole. He's not trying to be dramatic. He's saying it's serious here. From his instruction, if anyone questions these things, let that person ask my disciples for details. We can surmise that he may well have considered that this writing could be his last. Living in the harsh conditions he did and under constant threat of death by starvation, cold, or assassination, he may have intended this treatise to convey the necessary teachings to his successors and encourage his disciples. Discussing on the Buddhist prophecy, Mr. Toda wrote, in this writing we can palpably sense the serene state of mind Nichiren Daishonin, the Buddha of the latter day of the law. Buddhahood is a state of absolute happiness. In other words, he's writing as if he doesn't know if he's going to survive, but he's not freaking out about it at all. And he's talking about how happy he is that he's been able to accomplish what he's been able to accomplish in this lifetime. He says, a state of being that each moment is like a translucent ocean or a cloudless sky, utterly invincible and fearless. That's actual Ichinen Sensen. That's Buddhahood. This is how I perceived Nichiren's state of life during his exile on Sato. Second column. Nichiren's compassionate struggle to transform the destiny of humankind. The struggle of Kosen Rufu, which is a struggle against obstacles and devilish functions, abounds with the power to transform the destiny of each person. This, in turn, can lead to a transformation in the destiny of a country and a transformation in the destiny of all humankind. Because this is a struggle in which we dedicate our lives to fulfilling the great vow of the Buddha and seek to bring forth Buddhahood in ourselves and others. It constitutes the great path to elevating the life state of all humankind. During the joy of manifesting one's Buddhahood, Nichiren Daishonin says, what fortune is mine. How delighted I am. Also, through striving for Kosen Rufu with the aim of realizing happiness for ourselves and others, our own compassionate life force is strengthened. In this writing, Nichiren shows great compassion toward the ruler, his disciples, and his parents. His statement, I pray that before anything else I can guide and lead the ruler and those who have persecuted me, can be read as the ultimate expression of compassion. He also voices his wish to report to Shakyamuni about his praiseworthy disciples who have sincerely aided and supported him, and to transfer the great blessings of Buddhahood to his parents, thereby repaying his debt of gratitude to them. So now, what did all of that just say? It was a long paragraph. Mm-hmm. What's the underlying message of that? What's the title? Nichiren's compassionate struggle to transform the destiny of humankind. Okay, so what's the first thing that's very, very evident that President Ikeda commented on the most from that? What human nature? What's the highest human nature outside of wisdom? Just go from hell to Buddhahood. Buddhahood's wisdom. What's before Buddhahood?
The two vehicles.
Huh?
The two vehicles.
No, of the 10 worlds, I'm sorry. What's the world before Buddhahood in the 10 worlds?
Ignorance.
Huh?
Ignorance.
What?
Ignorance.
No, guys. Okay. This human nature is the mark of this particular world.
Outside of
Hell, hunger, animality, anger,
Amen.
learning, realization.
Bodhisattva.
And what's Bodhisattva good for? Compassion, right? So what I was trying to get to was compassion. Okay, compassion is the life of the Bodhisattva, right? Wisdom is the life of the Buddha. So what he's basically, though, expressing here is tremendous compassion, because what's he saying? He's saying in what President Ikeda has already equated to potentially could be viewed as his last will and testament. He's still expressing the desire to convert the ruler. What's the ruler done for him? Oh, he tried cutting off his freaking head. He exiled him to an obscure peninsula to go die. He sent him across the Sea of Japan to go die. Why is he back? Because the ruler decided to have compassion? Or the ruler decided he's a good guy? No, because every damn thing he says happens. And nobody can kill him. No one can kill him. All right? That's why he's back. He's back because he's the Buddha. But as the Buddha, what does he express? Some sort of, I told you so? Or, now you can see clearly. Those of you who doubted me. No. He never, ever, ever professes it that way. Right? He's worried about the ruler. Why does he care about the ruler? Because he thinks he's a cool guy? No. Parent, teacher, sovereign. Right? The ruler controls so many other people that if the ruler's won over, many people will be won over, just like it happened in Dingyo's day. Right? Why did the ordination platform get constructed? Because the ruler was convinced, I just watched you kick their ass. The 7 schools of the north and 3 schools of the south. Remember? The 7 schools. Right? So that's what he's saying here. He's saying, although striving for Kosen Rufu with the aim of realizing happiness for ourselves and others, our own compassionate life force is strengthened. When we behave as bodhisattvas, the bodhisattva nature and our Buddha nature are strengthened in our own life. So in other words, what he's trying to say is, when we do things for other people, we are never doing anything for other people. That's the truth. It just looks like that's what we're doing. From a causal standpoint, we're doing stuff for us. Now that's not our intent, and that's why we get that effective reward. But the act of compassion always instills a greater value in oneself. Do you understand? And that's what he's talking about here. He also voices a wish to report to Shakyamuni about his praiseworthy disciples who have sincerely aided and supported him and to translate. It's all about giving it all back to everybody else. You know, thank you to the disciples that helped me. Thank you to my mother and father who gave birth to me. Thank you to the sovereign who, even though they persecuted me, is the ruler and has kept peace in the nation. Do you understand? This is correct thinking. Not me, 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 me. Everyone else equally. He puts the sovereign on the same level as his parents and his disciples. Doesn't he? Everybody's equal. Yes. Continuing. Pervaded with joy in the middle of the first column of page 89, appreciation and compassion. Okay? What I just talked about. These resounding declarations flow forth from the Daishonin's towering state of life as the votary of the Lotus Sutra, who has battled through and triumphed over all obstacles. What's that called? Actual Ichinen Sanzen. Okay? Indeed, we can regard them as the jubilant expression of Buddhahood. Actual Ichinen Sanzen. As great proclamation of victory by the Buddha of the latter day. You guys are all with what I'm saying here? Do you understand really what I'm saying here? Okay, everybody's with me. Yeah. All right. Whom no onslaught of persecution could defeat. Continuing with the Gosho. Everybody understands that point, right? Okay, continuing with the Gosho. Now, as if in a dream, I understand the heart of the Treasure Tower chapter of the Lotus Sutra. As the sutra states, if you were to seize Mount Sumeru and fling it far off to the measureless Buddha lands, that too would not be difficult. But if after the Buddha has entered extinction in the time of evil, you can preach this sutra, that will be difficult indeed. Don't forget we already did the 6 easy and 9, right? Okay, or the 6 difficult and 9 easy. That's part of the head backwards. The great teacher Dingyo says, Shakyamuni taught that the shallow is easy to embrace, but the profound is difficult. To discard the shallow and seek the profound is the way of a person of courage. The great teacher Tentai trusted and obeyed Shakyamuni and worked to uphold the Lotus School, spreading its teachings throughout China. We of Mount Hei, the Tendai School of Japan, inherited the doctrine from Tentai and worked to uphold the Lotus School and to disseminate its teachings throughout Japan. I, Nichiren of Awa Province, have doubtless inherited the teachings of the law from these three teachers, Shakyamuni, Tentai, and Dingyo, and in this era of the latter day, I work to uphold the Lotus School and disseminate the law. Together we should be called the four teachers of the three countries, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. And before I go on with President Ikeda, I want you to see what he says here, because he's being very honest and very, very real and candid as a human being, where he says, now, as if in a dream, I understand the heart of the Treasure Tower chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? What does that really mean? Now, as if in a dream, I understand the heart.
Until it actualizes.
Right. The point is that you will all go through that. But it takes a great deal of study before that occurs. Okay? But if you pursue achieving actual Ichinen Senzen in your present form, you too will come up with realizations that you will not remember anybody specifically gave you. Because they come from your sincere daimoku as a Buddha to the original teacher, the Gohonzon. That's why if you don't chant enough daimoku, you will never get there.
Right.
Because all of this understanding comes from Nam-myoho Renge-kyo coming out of your mouth to the Gohonzon. It doesn't come from reading these freaking books. I read these freaking books to make it understandable for you to read the freaking book. But if you don't chant daimoku, if you don't practice with the same Ichinen, same life condition that he's telling you you must, what do you expect to get out of it other than to be more knowledgeable? Whatever fortune you have will be temporary. Trust me, know it. Personal experience. I was a multi-millionaire. Okay? It can come and go. You must chant daimoku. You must chant daimoku. So, I want to make that point because I love you all so much. I don't want you to ever think that this is about reading this stuff and understanding it. It's about chanting daimoku in front of the Gohonzon. Knowing and understanding this is the secondary point of that. Okay? You don't want to try and start with the third step. Start with the first step every time. To discard the shallow and seek the profound is the way of a person of courage. Here, Nichiren Daishonin discusses the concept of the 6 difficult and 9 easy acts, which is found in the Emergence of the Treasure Tower chapter of the Lotus Sutra. By the way, you put that note in for me, but last week I brain farted twice when I said emergence from the earth instead of emergence of the Treasure Tower, because we normally just call that the Treasure Tower chapter, and when I hear emergence, I immediately think of Bodhisattvas of the earth, so I brain farted twice. I think it was at 45.16 and in the first minute of last week. Okay, so to discard the shallow and seek the profound is the way of a person of courage. Here, Nichiren Daishonin discusses the concept of the 6 difficult and 9 easy acts, which is found in the Emergence of the Treasure Tower chapter of the Lotus Sutra. Compared to such things as seizing Mount Sumeru and flinging it off to the measureless Buddha lands, or loading dry grass on one's back and entering a great fire without being burned, it is far more difficult to propagate the Lotus Sutra after the Buddha's passing. So, that's difficult, right? What was Shakyamuni's purpose in teaching the 6 difficult and 9 easy acts? By emphasizing how difficult it will be to advance Kosen Rufu in the latter day, he sought to drive home to the Bodhisattvas at the assembly depicted in the Lotus Sutra the fact that they will need to make a powerful vow to guide all people to enlightenment. All right? So, what did that just say?
It's difficult.
It's very difficult. And why does Shakyamuni put those 6 difficult, 9 easy acts in there? To warn or to advise those at that assembly, of which, were we at that assembly? Yes, we're Bodhisattvas of the earth. We were at the ceremony in the air, right? We were at that assembly. It was to advise all of us how difficult it would be to re-enter the Sahe world as Bodhisattvas of the earth and uphold the law and not be swept away by it. The difficulty. Okay? The difficulty is a monster. It can only be dealt with daimoku. There's no amount of brilliance. I'm a brilliant person. It didn't save me from losing all that money. Okay? And I'm not being arrogant. I'm telling you the truth. It's really all about the quality of your faith. That's what I try and emphasize more than anything else that I can here. The heart of the treasure tower chapter. This is the heart of the Buddha's vow to realize the happiness of humanity. It is also the commitment of the bodhisattvas of the earth who inherit this vow of the Buddha and stand up resolutely to accomplish Kosen Rufu in the latter day, no matter how enormous the hardships they may face. So what are they actually? They're living extensions of the Buddha. They are Buddhas. They're doing everything that a Buddha does. They're living the same life as the Buddha. They have to deal with the 6 difficult and 9 easy acts. Hard to believe that there's fewer of the difficult ones than there are the hard ones. That's why I always... okay. So, as he indicates in the opening of the eyes, Nichiren established his teaching with a deep understanding of the significance of the Treasure Tower chapter, explication of the 6 difficult and 9 easy acts, and rose into action to fulfill his vow as a bodhisattva of the earth. True to his vow, he triumphed over the relentless succession of persecutions that assailed him. They never were able to kill him. During the Sado exile, his last great persecution, Nichiren eternally established Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as the supreme law for the enlightenment of all people. How so? During his exile, Sado exile, his last great persecution, Nichiren eternally established Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as the supreme law for the enlightenment of all people. What did he do that I just talked about last week that was so significant on Sado, that allowed Nichikan to put us on the continuing right path of understanding it correctly? Anybody remember? I'm asking the question to try and reinforce it. You don't remember? You do remember. Say it out loud then, Sling.
And the Gonzo and you would not separate.
Right.
Yeah.
The oneness of person and law. By writing the opening of the eyes and by writing the object of devotion for observation of the mind in the 5th 500-year period after the Buddha's passing. Okay. By writing those 2, he allowed for a teaching to survive later that would lead on to eternity. Do you understand? All right, so he's saying, during the Sado exile, his last great persecution, Nichiren eternally established Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as the supreme law for the enlightenment of all people. Moreover, in this writing, he issued his declaration for worldwide Kosen Rufu, which we can read as his great declaration of victory as the Buddha of the latter day of the law, which would make him the original teacher. That's what they're talking about. Thus, Nichiren writes, now as if in a dream I understand the heart of the Treasure Tower chapter. In other words, he is saying that because true to his vow, he has endured great persecution and dedicated his life to propagating the mystic law in this latter age, he has attained the heart of the Treasure Tower chapter, namely, the heart of the Buddha, namely, actual Ichinen Sanzen, namely, he is the Buddha. That's why this is his prophecy, the Buddha's prophecy, okay? Namely, the heart of the Buddha, overcoming all manner of hardships and dedicating our lives to the vow to propagate the Lotus Sutra is the sole way to make the heart of the Buddha our own. I'll read that again because it's so damn important. What did I just say? Without me rereading it, without you rereading it. What did I just say? It's so easy to listen to me read, isn't it? And not really think about what I'm saying until I ask the damn question and realize none of you really listened to anything I just said. All right, I'll read it again. Overcoming all manner of hardships. Now, this is Daisaku Ikeda talking to each person that's reading this with the aspiration of attaining Buddhahood or any sense of commitment to being a bodhisattva of the earth. All right? So this is Daisaku Ikeda saying this to you, because he's experienced it himself. He's saying it firsthand. He watched his mentor go through the same thing firsthand. He watched his mentor told him of his mentor. All right, so from Makaguchi to Toda to now Ikeda, he's saying, overcoming all manner of hardships. So what's all manner of hardships? Even losing a son, a beloved son, a job, a whatever, a love of life. It doesn't matter. There are innumerable hardships. So he's saying overcoming all manner means that whatever your plate gets filled with, you filled the goddamn plate, nobody else. Nietzsche didn't pick you out and go, I like you, I think I'll make it especially hard for you because I know you can handle it. No, you take the vow, though no one can give it to you. No one can assign it to you. You take the vow. You're the one that decided every damn thing you experience and you're experiencing. You said, I'll make sure I don't fail. If you fail, you screwed yourself, no one else. Right. Understand that. All right? So he's saying, overcoming all manner of hardships and dedicating our lives to the vow of propagating the Lotus Sutra is the sole way. What does the sole way mean? The only way to make the heart of the Buddha our own. To be the Buddha is the only way to become the Buddha. This is the point. Do you understand? All right. By maintaining. Do you understand? Yeah. So if you don't think you're the Buddha, how can you ever be the Buddha? If you don't think you can be the Buddha, how can you ever be the Buddha? If you always see the Buddha as something outside of yourself, how can you ever be the Buddha? If there's always a separation between the Gohonzon and you, how can you ever be the Buddha? It's really not difficult. You can't. And that's why he said soul way. It's the only way. By maintaining a strong and deep resolve to devote our lives to the vow of Kosen Rufu and fulfill our mission despite all obstacles, we can forge and develop within ourselves the life state of Buddhahood. Nichiren makes this point by citing the words of the great teacher Dingyo. To discard the shallow and seek the profound is the way of a person of courage. Here, a person of courage means a person of intrepid spirit. What does intrepid mean? Never give up. The intrepid, explorer. It means like, no matter how thick the jungle got, he kept going, right? The intrepid spirit who stands up confidently with faith. Why? Because he has faith. He believes. That's why he's confident. He knows he will be protected. He knows his prayer will be answered. There's no reason not to be confident. To not be confident is to slander.
Yes.
Understand that. You just diluted the power of your prayer tenfold. You chant as the Buddha, that prayer is pretty powerful. You chant as a weak little, can I please, will you help me maybe? Have you got time? Oh, that's a weak prayer. You might have to chant a lot of Daimoku before that one gets answered. Here, a person of courage means a person of intrepid spirit who stands up confidently with faith that is dedicated to Kosen Rufu in accord with the heart of the Buddha, described in the Lotus Sutra. You're living your life as a bodhisattva of the earth. You have nothing to worry about. When we devote ourselves courageously and tirelessly to the struggle for Kosen Rufu, the heart of the Buddha must well up in our lives. Impossible for it not to. Page 91, second column. The Lotus School is characterized by humanism and value creation. I'm almost done. I'm almost on time. The Lotus School is characterized by humanism and value creation. At the end of this writing, Nichiren Daishonin states that he has been undertaking the propagation of the mystic law in the latter day, having inherited the legacy of the so-called three teachers of the three countries of the Lotus Sutra, of the Lotus School: Shakyamuni in India, Tiantai in China, and Dingyo in Japan. He thus declares that his name will be added to theirs, so that together they will be called, the four teachers of the three countries. The four teachers of the three countries expresses the lineage of the votaries of the Lotus Sutra. Okay? It is the true line of succession in the effort to actualize Buddhism's ultimate ideal of universal enlightenment for all living beings. I added the for all living beings, but I want to make sure you understand what we're talking about when we say universal enlightenment. And votaries of the Lotus Sutra are the creative pioneers who open up the path to this goal. The teachings of the Lotus School bring forth the infinite power of the mystic law in our lives as well as those of others. These teachings also enable all people to realize their fullest potential, creating boundless value in their lives in the midst of an evil age and in an evil and defiled age, like lotus blossoms growing in a muddy water. These teachings also enable people to realize their fullest potential. What is that? To be the best surgeon, or the best basketball player, or the best chef. Is that your fullest potential he's talking about here?
No.
No, what is he talking about? Buddhahood!
Buddhahood.
Buddhahood automatically means you've achieved your fullest potential. Trust me, if you're the Buddha, you'll do whatever you do like a Buddha. Right? So he's saying, the teachings of the Lotus School bring forth the infinite power of the mystic law in our lives as well as those of others. It works for everybody equally. These teachings also enable all people to realize their fullest potential. They allow all people to achieve Buddhahood if they practice correctly. That then creates boundless value in their lives in the midst of an evil and defiled age. The hell is the land of tranquil light. Do you understand? Okay, so they're not affected by the environment. They affect the environment. That's called Eshofuni, right? The environment either controls you or you control the environment. You have that capacity. Like lotus blossoms growing in the muddy water, they enable people everywhere to lead victorious lives as brilliant flowers of humanity, as Buddhas, allowing the lotus blossoms of our individual lives and those of others to come into full glorious bloom. In other words, the Lotus School, and do notice how he's characterizing this now. He's kind of splitting it out, the Lotus School, because the Soka philosophy is part of the lineage of the Lotus School. You understand that, right? So he's not talking about Nichiren Shoshu or something like that. He's talking about this truth of understanding that starts with Shakyamuni, goes through Tentai, according to the appropriate time, according to the appropriate manner, according to the appropriate capacity of the people. Do you understand? Now that we're in the latter day of the law, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in the latter day of the law. In other words, the Lotus School is characterized by humanism and value creation, seeking to guide all people to the highest state of life. Nichiren here refers to himself not as Nichiren of Japan, but as Nichiren of Awa province, identifying himself as an ordinary human being concerned with his immediate locality. While this way of referring to himself could be interpreted as merely an expression of modesty, it also conveys that the teaching he has established has universal relevance for people everywhere based on their common humanity transcending national boundaries. Established in the lineage of the four teachers of the three countries, the Soka Gakkai is the sole organization dedicated to accomplishing the Buddha's decree and actually spreading the teachings of the true Lotus School throughout the world. It is a noble community of practitioners that continues to call forth countless bodhisattvas of the earth around the globe, even from Brazil. Thanks for stopping in. And advances dauntlessly toward peace into the eternal future. Mr. Toda cried out, "Let us lead the way of Kosen Rufu," and he proclaimed, "The Soka Gakkai is the king of the religious world. Together with all of you who have joined me in this struggle, I declare with great pride, we are the ones who are fulfilling the prophecy of the Buddha of the latter day of the law." Period. With exhilaration and bright hope, let us lead brilliant lives aiming toward the distant future, so that we can proclaim resounding victory for our lives and the SGI movement. Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.